The Marinade.
There's no O in Marinade. Let's try it one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
The Marinade.
Marinade.
Bone marinade. The
That's
Marinade.
The Marinade. With Jason Earle.
Nobody smiling as we rode across the desert ground.
Welcome to The Marinade with Jason Earle, a free-flowing conversation about the creative process with creative people. This is episode 90, and our guest is Jamestown Revival. Jamestown Revival is a musical duo made up of Jonathan Clay and Zach Chance. They have released 3 full-length records, a live album, and 4 EPs, including the most recent offering, Fireside with Louis L'Amour, which is the main focus of this conversation, and I highly recommend it. In addition to those wonderful records, the guys just collaborated to write the music for the stage production of SE Hinton's classic novel, The Outsiders. Jonathan and Zach are thoughtful, funny, open, and honest conversationalists. I'm so excited to bring this episode to y'all today. Everyone, my conversation with Jamestown Revival.
Lost his trail in the holler and we lost some time. Could it be that he was desert wise? He left us water and some good advice. Awful kind for a man.
I'm really looking forward to this, and I'm grateful for this opportunity.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for having us. We feel the same way.
Awesome.
Yeah, I like your image here.
Thanks, man. My
Cool.
partner in life is an artist. I had this when I first dreamt up this whole thing. I had almost immediately had the logo in my head, and quite literally, I guess. But she made it way cooler. she sketched that profile while we were sitting at a bar in like no time, and then put that together, and I'm in love with it.
That's great.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, guys, this has been so much fun to do research for a couple of reasons. My grandmother had Louis L'Amour books sitting around the house all the time, and I think I used to pick at them every once in a while, but I didn't really spend much time with his work. And so this time was super fun because I was able to read the collected short stories of Louis L'Amour while I'm reading it, listen to your record, which is inspired by the collected short stories of Louis L'Amour, Volume 1. And it has just given a lot to me. And so thank you for making this beautiful record.
Dude, thank you. Really appreciate you saying that.
Thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, I'd like to, you're welcome. I'd like to get into it, kind of get more granular about it. But if we can kind of start big picture and just sort of talk about you guys and your creative process, and then kind of zero back into the EP, that's kind of the roadmap for us today, if that's cool with you.
Cool.
So just kind of like on a more general level with the two of you, there's clearly, I've never seen you live, but I've watched plenty of videos getting ready for this. I've read some variation of what I'm about to say in several places, and you can just tell it with the music. There is this incredible synergy with the two of you. And I wonder how that informs the writing process and what that writing process looks like for you all on a general level.
It's just kind of, not to put it too simply, but I think we both kind of know it when we've got it. Like when it's in the room, when the muse is speaking to us, like we'll try 10 times to write a song, and maybe one of those times we get together, there's just something in the room that clicks, and we both know it when it's there, and we both know it when it's not. And although we display different levels of determination, sometimes trying to force it, even when we force it and we write a song, we know it's just we did write a song so we can check the box, but we wrote a song that's likely nothing's going to happen with it because it just kind of wasn't there. And I think in some ways the same thing can kind of happen live. You know, there is a live show, I think, is a bit of it's a give and take with you and the other people in the room. And sometimes everybody's on the same page, and it's just like you're all swimming down the lazy river together in the same direction, going with the current. And then sometimes for whatever reason, it feels a little bit more disjointed. And not to say that, I don't ever feel like we have bad shows. I just feel like sometimes we have shows that feel like they don't come as easy, but then we'll get off stage and, someone will come up and like, man, that was the best show I've seen in the last 10 years. And they had such a great time. And so I think it is also important to remain conscious of the fact that, just because you're in your own head, doesn't mean that everybody else is necessarily sharing that same sentiment. And, you gotta just do the best you can every night. And, regardless of like what sort of weird little things are trying to creep into your consciousness.
So it is, so the process itself then, is it you guys need to get in the same room to make it happen, or are you going about your lives separately and writing things and then piecing those things together?
This year we did more of that. Just, the nature of like, I hate to even say the word COVID, heard it too many times over the past 24 months, but just the nature of that. It forced us to kind of write a little bit. We had a lot stockpiled when we got together. And then we also ended up just writing more because we weren't playing shows. So we essentially wrote 2 albums this year, which typically 2 albums takes us, 3 or 4 years to write. So it was pretty cool to just have that time to really focus on it and really find a groove.
Was there like back to that question of sort of the synergy between the two of you, is there like was there a moment, I mean, you've known each other for a long time, right? So was there a moment where you kind of were like, oh yeah, this is something special? Or was that something that kind of developed over time?
I think it's like a lot of the true blessings in your life. I think as you're experiencing them, you don't appreciate the full value. And a lot of times that full value is only realized in hindsight, like whether it's, time with my kids, like my kids are driving me crazy and it's all stressful and it's hard for me to enjoy the moment. And then I look back on the pictures and I say, oh God, that was like the most beautiful thing that's happened in the last 2 years. Like that crazy moment when the kids had lost it, but that day we'd gotten to do this and that, and it was incredible memories. I think the same thing kind of happens, getting to tour and stuff and getting to write songs together. There's a lot of other stuff that happens that sometimes makes it a little hard to see the forest through the trees. And then a lot of times we get done writing a song and I'll go back and look at the lyrics and I'm like, I can't believe we wrote that. It's not bad. Like that's all right. Like, how did we do that? I don't even think we could do it again if we tried. And then somehow we managed to do it again.
It's funny. I feel like we're certainly capable of writing songs independently of each other, and we've done that method or brought in ideas. But I think a true Jamestown Revival song is at its best when we're probably in the room together creating it. It just takes on a different language that is hard to explain. And it's probably just because we spent so much damn time together.
Man, that's a great point. There really is no substitute for experience, especially shared experience like that.
For sure. Yeah, if you notice, we say a lot of the same stuff and finish each other's sentences. It's borderline embarrassing sometimes.
Well, the result, it turns out beautifully. And so perspective seems to be kind of a theme here, and trying to keep perspective on things. You mentioned it about a live show, and you just mentioned it about, experiences with your kids and then experiences with the band. Are there things that either or both of you do to make sure that you are, as much as possible, maintaining perspective in the moment? Is there a meditation practice or journaling or something that either or both of you do?
I wouldn't say there's like a practice that both of us do, like necessarily, not anything with structure. But I will say that the past couple years, I don't know, personally, I've been really trying to make an effort to practice habitual gratitude.
Mm.
And I think that's helped a lot. Just like, you know, I'm not going to lie, being away from my family is really hard on tour.
Mm.
And like getting back and seeing, you know, my kids, they look different in 2 or 3 weeks. They've changed, and I've missed a lot of really important stuff that I hate to miss. Like these times are never going to come again. But so it's easy to start dwelling on that and focusing on that, and then, you know, miss out on the fact that, wow, what we're getting to do is such a huge, incredible, it's an opportunity, and it's a blessing. It's a rarity. And this is what we've been working for so long. And so, yeah, I think just trying to live in gratitude, and every day waking up and just looking around and being thankful for every single aspect of everything that's so great about what we get to do. And it's like, if that's what I focus on, then I walk out on stage and I'm happy to be there. And I wake up in the morning and I'm happy to be on the road, because I'm going to be out there regardless. And yeah, there's ups and downs to being out on the road, and I can, you know, just kind of choosing to focus on all the great things that are out there to focus on, and making that decision conscious.
Mm.
That's me. Zach, what do you,
I mean, that was well put. I think,
Zach makes a hell of a pour over coffee, so that's part of his ritual.
yeah, you know, it's funny. I wish there's so many times, especially with touring and all the experiences we have, I've made the promise to myself to start journaling, and I've half asked it for so long, and I've just never kept up with it. And it's something I really, you know, I keep saying I'm going to do, and I regret not doing more of. I don't, you know, I think certainly meditating or any one of those things would be great. It seems to find me, you know, you get so busy and you get swept up in the minutia of things, or, you know, John and I always joke, like, whatever landmark we're trying to achieve, whether it be like some sort of success, like some venue that we've just like been dying to play, we get there, and then as soon as you're there, you're already over it. You know, like, oh, well, okay, the next one, that'll make me happy. And I think certainly with this last year, having all this time, or now I find myself in moments of just being able to be in reflection. It catches me at random, you know, I'll be watching like a TV show or on taking a jog or something, and I'll just get like really emotional. And you know, thinking about just all these things we get to do, and how cool it is to do this, and then how much I think I took for granted what it is we get to do until it was, you know, it was taken away from us for a year and a half. And I really took for granted that I never saw like some sort of pandemic that would sideline our career to the point where we were just stuck. I always really took that for granted. I thought we were sort of bulletproof in our career choice. Like if it was going to come to a halt, it was by our own doing, you know. So this last year, I think, has provided us with a lot of perspective.
Yeah, to one more thing to that point. There's a poem called "The Station." It's by Robert Hastings, and it's such an incredible thing to read and remind yourself. And essentially, to sum it up in one sentence, it's just about the fact that life truly is about the journey. It's not about the destination. And, you know, as musicians, it's a really competitive, I think it's a very competitive field, like a lot of fields to be in. But being a musician, it's really easy just to sit there and compare yourself apples to apples with what other musicians are doing. How many tickets are they selling? What venues are they getting to play? You know, how well is their record doing? And then you find all the people who are doing better in those respects than yourself. And then you're like, well, I need to be doing that. You lose me? You got me? Hello.
Okay, now you're back. Yeah.
Anyways, you start comparing yourself by
me.
all these benchmarks, you know, and other artists are doing better than you are. And then you start thinking, well, if I can achieve that benchmark, if I can step up that aspect, then I'm going to be happy and I'm going to be fulfilled. And then you play that next level, you know, you get to play the Greek theater, or you get to play Red Rocks, and you're like, well, I mean, that was amazing, but I'm still the same person. And it didn't, you know, it was what was valuable was getting to Red Rocks and the journey to Red Rocks. It wasn't necessarily playing Red Rocks, even though, don't get me wrong, amazing experience, but it really is about the journey. And it's about like some of the most special times are about when we were playing for crowds of 5 or 10 people, and Zach and I used to go camping all the time on the road. Because it was cheaper. And we had no other choice, but B, because, you know, we didn't have the schedule, and we had like 2 days off here and there, and we were just out there trying to play anywhere we could. And all we could about then was one day we're going to be on a tour bus. And now we're on a tour bus, and I'm like, man, we talk about it all the time. We're like, man, that was pretty special. Those are some cool times we had.
It's funny. No, I mean, it sounds so obvious, you know, talking about it now, like, oh, it's the journey, but it's so hard. And it is funny. The stories we end up, you know, rehashing and laughing about the most are the ones that were like the most miserable at the time.
That's funny. I was just talking with Seth Walker, and he wrote a book, part memoir, part art gallery, part, you know, retrospective of his career. And one of the things we were laughing about was that there aren't a whole lot of happy stories in there. It's always when they're not unhappy, but it's always when shit goes wrong. Like, it's always when something it was messed up is the ones that he kept remembering and coming back to.
Yeah.
Talking about the journey, I think that's that concept. And I like how you put that, Zach, the fact that it's kind of like you look back and it's like, well, of course it's about the journey, right? But it is difficult to keep that perspective in the moment. But I think fiction and art of all kinds helps us with that and helps us to get that perspective. And certainly in reading these short stories of Louis L'Amour and then listening to your songs on Fireside with Louis L'Amour, I was reminded, especially because we've been home for so long, I was reminded of just how important it is for me to keep perspective on the journey. Each of those stories has usually a physical journey in it, and it truly is about the journey. A lot of times the end is like not at all what you expected, which is part of the charm of those stories as well. So let's get into the record if we could, just talking about, first of all, I think the inspiration is fascinating. So if you could talk a little bit about the inspiration for the EP, and then kind of getting into the process.
Yeah, I think it was Zach's idea to do this EP, if I recall correctly. I think one day, I don't know, he threw out the idea, and I think this was years ago, maybe the first time we started talking about it, but we were touring a lot and just had a lot going on. And it was one of those things that was like, yeah, that'd be cool to get to. We should totally do that. And then you just keep saying that for 2 years and it never happens. But
then, I have like diarrhea of bad ideas. So you gave me credit for one good.
I wouldn't say bad ideas. I would just say ideas, some bad, some good. That was a good idea. And but definitely lots of ideas coming from Zach. Big ideas, real big ideas. Sometimes I'm just like, yeah, dude, totally. We'll totally do that.
Yeah. I don't even need a substance to
yeah. Oh yeah, we're totally gonna put on a festival one day. Yeah, it's totally gonna happen. And anyways, we obviously got our tour canceled, found ourselves at home. And it was finally that time that we needed to be able to dig into some extracurricular stuff like that. And the process was, from a logistics and sort of technical perspective, we wanted the sync to be the same as the short stories, a collection of short stories. So we took volume 1, we went through chronologically. We read the first story, wrote the first song, second story, second song, and so on, because we wanted to leave no doubt in people's minds, what song was inspired by what story. We actually wanted people to be able to read one or listen to the album, read or listen alongside each other. And we wanted them to fit together like a puzzle. And so that was a very deliberate choice. We made no mistake about, what stories were for what songs. And so much so that, we've been referencing Louis L'Amour with our past albums, Wandering Man, The Education of a Wandering Man. And we decided that this was so obvious. We changed the titles of all the songs, but the story was so close. We wanted to get the blessing of the Louis L'Amour estate. So we ended up getting in contact with Bo, who is Louis L'Amour's son, and got his blessing. Ended up, long story short, went to his ranch in Durango, saw some really cool stuff of Louis and the house where Louis actually did some writing and just really cool stuff. And it was great getting to know Bo and Louis's wife and Bo have been incredibly supportive of the project. So that's been great
awesome.
Too. Yeah.
That sounds like such a thrill.
It was amazing. Yeah. We recorded actually some live stuff in the old barn on their ranch.
Wow. Where
they threw parties and had get-togethers and saddled up their horses. They used to ride, and there was still some old latigo and bridles and stuff in the hanging, old tack hanging on the wall in there, which was really cool. It was all crusty and cracked at this point, but those were things that Louis actually used. You felt like you were walking in the presence of his ghost a little bit. It was really special.
Wow. Did y'all write it all while you were there?
No, we'd already written everything.
Okay.
We just went to film stuff, and we really wanted to meet Bo and shake his hand in person. And just, I don't know, it felt like it really brought the whole thing full circle for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also reminded me, because starting out, when John and I were first, touring around and we were living in California, we would stay in the back of our car, and John had started reading Louis L'Amour's autobiography, Education of a Wandering Man, and that was such a big inspiration for us. And it's funny, this project to go shoot that stuff, we had a small window where we could sneak out there, and so we jumped in a car and just deadheaded to Durango from Austin with a friend of ours who's a good friend of ours who's Paul Pryor, who's a videographer. And it was like such a very reminiscent of the early days of Jamestown touring. So like even in that process, it kind of brought us back to the beginning, which was really, really cool experience, because we 15 hours there, spend a day and a half or 2 days with Bo exploring the ranch, and then 15 hours straight back on the way home. So it was a fun sort of ode to the origins of Jamestown Revival.
So cool. You knocked it out of the park with these songs, and they're wonderfully done, and that juxtaposition of the stories with the songs for me was really powerful, as I said before. And I hope people do consume the two in that way. I wonder though, going through the process before you talked with his family and so forth, were you at all anxious about not doing the work justice, or did you feel confident you could do what you did, which is knock it out of the park?
Yeah, we felt incredible trepidation about not doing the work justice, or them not being okay with it, or I mean, obviously this is Bo's father's legacy, something he's going to be understandably precious about, which he very much is, and he's very protective of it.
Yeah.
Which meant so much more when he actually did in fact say, man, when I heard y'all were doing this, I was pretty skeptical, and I got the first song. I was actually really impressed, and I thought, geez, are they going to be able to continue? Like, did they get lucky, or are they going to be able to do this, for 5-6 more songs? It's like, and in fact, every song is really unique, and every song really does the story justice. And he was incredibly complimentary. And the fact that, yeah, he is precious, justifiably so, that just gives so much more credence to his support and his blessing of the project and of our writing, because Bo's a writer himself. He's a great writer, and I consider him someone whose opinion really means something, and it comes from a place of it comes from a really legitimate place. That he's talented himself, and so yeah, it was wonderful validation, which every artist needs. That we need all the validation we can get. Yeah.
I certainly don't. I don't think if they'd have come back and not felt good about the work, I don't know if you'd be hearing it now. So that was we kind of had written 2 or 3 of them before we sent them. We hadn't even finished it yet, and with just the hopes that they would have signed off on it. And once we had their blessing, it was. But yeah, there's some doubt every now and then.
That takes a lot of creative courage, y'all, to take these stories that have meant so much to you and to not only write the CP, but then to reach out to the family and share it with the family in hopes of their blessing. That takes a lot of creative courage.
Yeah, it's sort of akin to, spilling your guts on a song and then putting it out on, Spotify for people to rip to shreds. So you kind of get used to the creative crucifixion, and just, you just kind of get used to it, and you put yourself on the chopping block. I don't know. We've written 3 albums now, and I think, 4 albums. And now I think we're finally getting to the point where you just kind of get used to it, putting yourself out there creatively. And also, we've been working on the musical adaptation for The Outsiders, the book by SE Hinton.
Yeah.
And that, I really do think, gave such a foundation and a skill set from which we could to write the Louis L'Amour EP. It just, having that experience and writing something based on work that you didn't create, writing from a book is what that was. It really helped prepare us for this. I don't think we could have done the job that we did had we not been through the last 5 years writing a musical for The Outsiders.
Wow. How much can you say about that project? That's really exciting that you're doing that.
Yeah, we're fully licensed to talk about it and discuss it. It's actually, we're opening in Chicago at the Goodman this coming April. Wow. Which we're really excited about. And hopefully, if things go well, the plan is optimistically and humbly, we would hope that this play eventually goes to New York City.
Wow. Congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
That's really cool.
I mean, it's an honor to be involved with it, but as with the L'Amour stuff, we're just piggybacking on the great writing of SE Hinton, or both of these authors. So we're lucky to be able to have these opportunities, honestly.
Yeah.
And I gotta brag on our team for Broadway. We have the most incredible creative team that we're working with. Like, our co-writer on The Outsiders is Justin Levine, who's the musical director for Moulin Rouge, that's currently on Broadway. Well, coming back to Broadway finally. Mm-hmm. Our director is Liesl Tommy. She just directed the new Aretha Franklin movie that's coming out this August called Respect, that looks incredible. Yeah. It's an MGM Goldminer production. It's awesome. And then Adam Rapp, our book writer, is literally a genius of a dude. He's incredibly just captivating. Love the guy. So it's our team has been awesome. So we've been able to, it's like we're like a tripod with 4 legs or 5. We're like a 5-legged tripod.
I not to get too off topic here, but just to brag on that team, it's been incredibly, I think, a really incredible experience for John and I to be in that room and be around people that we feel. It's one of the first times I think he and I have been in a room when it's not with just each other, where we felt comfortable creating in that way, and it felt like collectively it all sort of goes someplace bigger than the 5 people sitting in the room.
Wow, man, forgive my ignorance about what making a musical looks like, but I'm kind of curious about 5 years is a long time to work on a project, and what your role was in this whole process. Like, what did it look like for you all, in how you fit into that team that you're bragging on?
Yeah, so no explanation needed for the ignorance, because Zach and I certainly were 100% ignorant coming into this thing. Basically, it's produced by a company called the Araka Group. They're the producers for the play, and basically they were looking for writers to come write the musical aspect of a musical who had never written a Broadway musical before. They were looking for somebody from the Americana world, more just songwriter centric, like an Americana band. And we wrote some songs on spec for it, and they really liked them. And so they gave us a shot to go full bore into this thing. And basically, we have a book writer who's adapting SE Hinton's novel for the stage. And, in a really summarizing and distilling this down, you kind of outline the story, and you decide where you feel like musical numbers, songs would be best served to push the story along. And there's a real passing. It's like a relay race. There's a passing of the baton. The book takes it from A to B, and a song takes it from C to D, and then book picks back up from E to H, and so on. And you just slowly work your way through the story. And I had no idea how many times you would have to rewrite these songs, or it's a lot of work. We had absolutely no idea. Yeah. And how many songs we would write just to throw them away, that will never see the light of day, for reasons that can be completely unrelated to the song itself, but just the structure of the story changes, or you have to make cuts, or all that. So yeah, we have a music supervisor who is helping really stitch book and music together. We have just our book writer, Adam Rapp, who is everywhere there's not music, there's dialogue, and he writes all of that. And then all the music we've written in conjunction with Justin Levine. I'm sorry. Wow. I'm really on one. And then Liesel, Tommy, is directing it and making sure the train is staying on the tracks.
Wow. So many moving parts. So much potential for, like, I don't want to say drama or whatever, conflict of some sort, like creative conflict. How comfortable were you guys with getting like notes on a song, either because it didn't fit or for some other reason, and then going back and rewriting?
At first, not very comfortable, because it's just so foreign to us.
Yeah.
We get real precious with songs, really like, when you do that for an album, there's nobody sitting there saying like, well, this song doesn't really fit on the album, so you can't put it on the album. If you love the song, you're just going to put it on the album. Mm-hmm. But with this, there's, a lot of different opinions, and a lot of people giving you notes and saying, we don't think this song is right, even though you may love the song, it has to serve the. And so, yeah, but at this point, we're not precious about anything anymore. We'll rewrite a song 5 times and just not think twice about it. So it's been good to get us really flexible in that sense.
I think it's been great for us. I think it's Justin Levine, our writing partner on this project, is he's really been good at. I mean, we've essentially sort of had like a master's class in musicals, and he's been so good at helping guide us. Not to mention just his talent is incredible, but not being so precious about. I think it's almost like two different categories now. I think we have Jamestown, which is like this sort of sacred thing that is John and I's, and then it's almost like we've kind of learned to write in a different way, which has been so fun to step outside of something so like so much smaller and like just the two of us and you know, like I said, sacred, but it's felt like growth, which is what you hope to do as you move along in the world.
Right. That's exciting, man. It sounds like there are lessons you learned in that process that you can then take back to Jamestown Revival and to your own records.
I think so.
For sure. It was a direct application of a lot of the things we learned for the musical, because we outlined every story, and you know we had to ask ourselves, what were the critical things we had to hit? What was something that if we felt like the song was getting too long, like what did we want to make cuts, and what part of the spine did we want to leave? It was that all those things. It was like writing mini musicals. We basically wrote 6 mini musicals. I'm being very generous, but but yeah, it was, yeah, it's like if a musical is like a whole cask full of whiskey, we had one little nip on the rocks.
Man, that's great. I want to honor your time, and I have a couple more things I wanted to talk about. One of them is just usually we end with what you're getting down on. So you're both readers, clearly. What art has you inspired right now? It could be music you've been listening to. It could be a book or a film or something. What are you excited about right now?
Well, is it self-indulgent to say that I'm really excited about the album we just recorded?
No, I think that's great.
Because I'm really jacked. I think I don't know. I'm really excited to put this album out. We just got out of the studio. We worked for the first time. We worked in a studio, an actual real studio that we didn't have to set up out in the woods somewhere, which as inspiring as that is, it was really great to just be able to get in and focus entirely on recording the music rather than having to set up a studio and clear out a hay barn.
You mean we don't have to pack all this gear in a trailer and then drive it halfway across the country?
Yeah. You mean we're not exhausted by the time we're starting recording the first song? It was really refreshing. So we actually worked at Nile City Sound in Fort Worth, Texas, with Josh Block, who's, you know, the dude responsible for, you know, the Leon Bridges records and some camp stuff and some really great sounding records. Incredibly talented dude. He was in a band called White Denim, and him and Robert Ellis produced the and gosh, the player, you know, we Nick and Ed, our rhythm section, they played on the record, but Robert Ellis played some additional acoustic guitar.
Who is a mad genius.
The dude is just ridiculously talented. He makes me want to quit guitar. Yeah, he does. It's really bad. And Ross Brown was on fiddle, and Will Van Horn was on pedal steel. And so we just, that band, and Juno on one song. We tracked that live, that configuration just tracked every song live to the floor, and it was really special.
Nice
session. So nice. Yeah, first song from that comes out in October, with the record coming out in January, and we are hitting the road again.
Awesome. That's great. Good for y'all. That's really exciting. You got so much shit going on right now. That's so fun.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we've had time to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Time's everything. I wonder about that too. One of the things I've been asking artists about lately is like, if you think that, because the model was the model for so many years. You make the record and then you go tour behind the record, and you try to sell tickets and merch, and you do the whole thing. But so many of, like, I know that people felt differently about live streams. Some people loved it, some people didn't like it, but so much great art did come out last year despite what was happening. I mean, some of my favorite records I've heard in a long time came out in 2020 and in the first part of this year. And so I am curious, like, what that looks like for artists, and if you have any sense of whether you think you'll continue, like, put the record out and then go on your traditional tour, if you've rethought that at all.
Yeah, we thought about that a lot. I mean, I think you're going to see more music coming out over the next year than you've seen in the past 5 to 10, personally. I just think everybody has a record coming out, which is exciting. There's going to be a whole lot of stuff out there. There's going to be a whole lot of stuff, competing for time and competing for ears and eyes and all that. But I think it's a wonderful time for creativity because people have had the actual time to do it. So
yeah. The other exciting thing too is it's reinvigorated, I think, everybody's lust for live shows, like whether it be the performers or the audience. Like, I think there's going to be some really electric rooms happening. They already are. And that's fun. That, like, it was all taken away. That shared experience was taken away. And the energy for it seems really, really exciting.
Yeah. That's really well said. That's a great point. I've only made it to a couple of shows in the last month or so, I guess. And man, it's been fun. It's been so fun. And those rooms there's been a different energy for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows how long, we're all human, and it's in our nature to take things for granted, but I think it'll have a lasting effect, at least into the new year.
Yeah. I agree. Guys, this has been such a pleasure. I don't want to take more of your time, but I'm just so grateful for your time and energy. I'm grateful for this EP. I'm really excited you got new music coming. I'm really excited to hear that. I hope you make it down to Florida at some point so I can see you live. But thank you all so much for everything.
Jason, thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure. Enjoyed chatting with you. This is fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, and thanks for giving us some time on your platform, and we really appreciate it.
Awesome. My pleasure, guys. Have a wonderful evening.
Hey, you too, buddy.
Thanks, man.
See ya.
Later.
He had a wife, same name as mine. Was it just the wrong place, wrong time? Sure didn't seem like a man who was a killing time.
Jamestown Revival, y'all. Thank you so much, Jonathan and Zach. Thank all of you for listening. This was so much fun. What a great conversation. JamestownRevival.com for all things Jamestown Revival. I am really looking forward to that new record. Check out all of their stuff. And when you're over on the website, they've also got some really cool merch, including this ringer tee that I got my eye on, and their excellent records are available over there as well. MarinadePodcast.com for all things The Marinade, including written pieces, photography, our online store, and more. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Give us a follow and a 5-star rating on your podcast app. These are all free, painless ways to support the show. We also just like interacting with fans of the show over on Instagram and Twitter. If you really like what we're doing, please consider joining our Patreon community, where for just a few bucks a month, you can gain access to Patreon exclusive content, like our show Jason's Journey, where I talk about the moments that shape my creative life. I also provide a little window into the process of making the Marinade, and sometimes we interact on a deeper level. We get together for Patreon happy hours. We had our live recording of the episode with Seth Walker a few months ago, which was a blast. It's just a good time. If you can join us, if you can swing it, please join us. If not, I totally understand. I just appreciate you listening and spreading the word about the Marinade. All right, y'all, it's time for what I'm getting down on, this segment of the show where I talk about the art that is inspiring me at the moment. I just finished the novel Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, the owner of one of our favorite local eating and drinking establishments, Aardvark, here in Orlando. If you're ever in town, hit up Aardvark. He's not an avid reader, but he was adamant that I should read this book. And, sometimes that kind of recommendation almost holds even more weight. Like if somebody who doesn't really read all that often says, you got to check out this book, it really grabbed me. I'm almost more inclined to check it out. And I did. I hesitated because it is, if you listen to this show with any regularity, you know I'm prone to ruminating on existence and freaking out about death and the futility of the whole damn thing. But I'm glad I read this. It sent me into the deepest recesses of my nightmares. But I mean that as a compliment. It's pretty heavy, but I recommend it. So Never Let Me Go. There's also a film adaptation that's pretty good that I watched the other night. So just check that out. Also, while I was in Montana, I recently got to get into the backcountry in Montana, up in Glacier National Park. Just such good medicine. There's a written piece over on marinadepodcast.com about that experience. I'm actually writing it in parts because just so much happened and I have so much to say about it. But while I was up there, I read Norman Maclean's A River Runs Through It, the classic novella that was also made into a classic film by Robert Redford. There's a post over on our Instagram, Marinade Podcast Instagram, that explains how I was feeling when I read this novella. I have a lot to say, and I may say more in the written pieces that I'm publishing on the website. In the meantime, check that out and leave a comment. I'd love to get a constructive conversation going. It's about relationships. It's about politics. It's about race. It's about all kinds of stuff. So, having meaningful conversations like that, I think we can still do. So let's do that. If you have something to say, if you don't, no big deal, just check it out over on Instagram. And if you haven't read A River Runs Through It, do so. It's fantastic. I have a couple of records to recommend. Mercy Bell's Golden Child is this in-your-face collection of country songs. So smart. And if you're a Patreon patron, you already know this, but I'm thrilled to announce that Mercy Bell is going to be a guest on the Marinade coming up really soon. So check out Golden Child, y'all. Give it a spin. Also, there's another record I've been listening to quite a bit by J.W. Francis. It's called Wander Kid. It's partly inspired by a trip on the Appalachian Trail. So, for me as a hiker, and especially somebody who has hiking fresh in his memory and is coming off that experience and still feeding off of that experience, this record landed in a big way. Stylistically, it's a departure from the kind of thing I often recommend. I wouldn't call it Americana by any means. Just a dope record though. J.W. Francis, Wander Kid. Check that out. And then as far as TV and movies, I recommended Never Let Me Go, the film adaptation. I also started watching The White Lotus on HBO. It's a story of it takes place in this Hawaiian resort by the same name, and several people that are vacationing there for various reasons. You'll notice a lot of familiar faces. Steve Zahn, for example, and Jennifer Coolidge, who, if you are my age, you will remember as Stifler's mom in American Pie. It's just I'm really digging it, and I didn't think I would, based on the trailer, and then also based on the first half of the first episode. So if you're like me and you watch the trailer and you think that's not for me, or if you watch the first half of the first episode and you're like me and you think that's not for me, stick it out. I think there's only 2 episodes so far. I've watched them both, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. But give it a shot. if you were on the fence about it, give it a shot, because it's really good. It's well written, it's well acted, it's entertaining. And I thought it was going to be kind of shallow, and I was wrong. It's not. All right, y'all, that's all I got for now. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, go out and create something. I appreciate you so much. Cheers, y'all.